Thousands of voters here in Massachusetts casting their ballots today, including dozens who showed up to the polls bright and early this morning.
Maybe dark and early.
Yeah.
Western Mass News reporter Matt Price spoke to some of those voters in Springfield to get their thoughts on this important day.
There was definitely excitement on this election day as dozens of people in Springfield stopped by the local Boys and Girls Club to fulfill one of their most important rights, voting. And there were plenty of other feelings on display.
Optimistic for sure. I think that it's going to be groundbreaking one way or another.
I'm nervous for the country. I mean,
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be really, really big for whatever happens to the country, and hopefully that whoever we vote for makes great decisions for the country.
The biggest item on the ballot, Vice President Kamala Harris taking on former President Donald Trump for the office of the presidency. Massachusetts residents are also voting between incumbent Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren or Republican challenger John Deaton. Voters like Susan Scripter have voted in every election season, telling Western Mass News it is important to make her voice heard.
We are given that right, so I feel that you should be voting because not all places you can vote like that.
After elections are over, voters are hoping for some calm and unity.
This is a great country. People need to think about that, and if their person that they vote for doesn't win, then they need to concede, just like the person who doesn't get in, they need to concede.
No matter who wins all of the races, including the one for the White House, what matters is this: millions of people across Massachusetts and the country did their civic duty and voted. In Springfield, Matt Price, Western Mass News.
And just as a reminder, be sure to tune in to Western Mass News throughout the evening for the latest from the polls, both locally and nationally.